International Black Protest News. I'm gonna go over some memorable African slash uh African diaspora news that I just found interesting, at least to me. So International Black Protest News. Okay. Um, Content note. Do keep in mind I'll be talking about police violence, authoritarianism, murder, and other violent things. Also, there are more places than the ones I'll talk about today going through protests and fights against state-sanctioned violence, police brutality, and racism. This is just a beginning glance at other countries' problems. Also, these countries I'll bring up today are not just sad sacks and places where there is no joy at any point of the lives of the country's inhabitants. These are places with problems, and every place has problems. It's just the people are trying to fix said issues. Countries will cover Nigeria, Egypt, Brazil, and Canada. Wide array, a wide array of countries. Nigeria. Nigeria is the seventh largest country in the world and the most populous in Africa. It It's it's been a democracy for 21 years and gained independence from Great Britain on October 1st, 1960. Nigeria erupted in demonstrations after a video of a SARS officer shooting a man in southern Nigeria circulated on Twitter. SARS is not referring to the type of stuff like COVID. In Nigeria, SARS is the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. Its job was to stop crime, its job was to stop crime when it was created in 1992. But for a long time now, it's been a big source of extrajudicial killings, sexual assaults, and extortion. SARS mainly targets middle class young people because of an internalized organizational culture of stealing with impunity. This started when SARS went after the Yahoo Boys, a group of internet frauders. SARS's main tactic was just swiping money from slash detaining anyone who seemed to be too wealthy. Basically, people who were not connected to established wealth. Just any random person. That policy was met by not much pushback, because Nigeria's crime rates were, and still are, astronomically high. A lot of people viewed it as like a security tax. Nigerians were not happy about it, though. Just the scars of a military dictatorship run deep. But now Nigeria's middle class has grown. That meant more money for SARS to steal, which caused conflict, to say the least. The government at large in Nigeria has stopped the protests for now with extreme forms of brutality by using the army and police to injure and kill protesters. In Lagos, they killed 12. The president of Nigeria disbanded SARS, but said the SWAT team will carry out its duties, which has people worried that it will just be SARS 2.0. Though they have stopped the protests right now, Nigerians have had enough, especially young people, who are organizing for structural change, not just in policing, but in all of society. Okay, on a lighter note, Nigeria's national dish is jollof rice, but pounded yam is better. Its flag is green and white, and it's in West Africa. So it's green, white, green. Egypt. Egypt is the 14th largest country in the world and is the third largest country in Africa. Egypt is incredibly old and it mostly gained independence from Great Britain on February 22nd, 1922. Egypt had an explosion of protests on the 20th of September that was caused by a mixture of a governmental policy of demolishing homes that were built without permits unless residents pay a very pricey fine, the anniversary of an ex-military contractor sending out a call to protest, governmental brutality, the pandemic's economic effect, and general poverty on the rise. An interesting fact that's somewhat overlooked is how the government's policies of destroying houses are a general attack on the poor, ethnic and religious minorities like Nubians and Copts face a giant blow as a larger percent of the population are poor. However, across ethnic, religious, and cultural lines, people protested. The people were met, though, with violent police that killed at the minimum 2 people and at the minimum arrested hundreds of people, including children. Throughout the protests, people called for the current president, he's more like a dictator, of Egypt to resign and leave. The people of Egypt are very happy. The people of Egypt are very unhappy. Unhappy. The people of Egypt are very unhappy with the results of their revolution 10 years ago and are willing to fight to change that. Um, okay, so on a lighter note, koshari is Egypt's national dish. The Egyptian flag is red, white, and black. On the white band, there is an eagle. Egypt is in northern Africa. Brazil. Brazil is the sixth largest country in the world, the most populous in South America. Brazil is the country with the highest number of black people outside of Africa, with about 56% of the population identifying as black or brown. 56% of the sixth largest country, that's a lot of people. It gained independence from Portugal on September 7th, 1822. Brazil flared up in racism protests. The protests were caused by 2 deaths of Afro-Brazilian children that happened within a week of each other. Brazil's black and brown population have faced rampant discrimination and violence since being dragged on slave ships all the way to Brazil. Systematic racism is extremely prevalent in Brazil, even though it has the myth of a racial democracy. Though in that racial democracy, black and brown people are more likely to be poor, live in favelas, be murdered by cops, have their communities underfunded, and are more likely to die of diseases like COVID. It's very similar to what black and brown people go through in the U.S. Though keep in mind, brown in the U.S. means something different than brown in Brazil. In the year 2019, the country of Brazil had 18,000 victims of state violence, and 80% were Afro-Brazilian. And during the protests, the police acted like the police in the other countries mentioned and were extremely awful to the protesters. Police violence did not stop there because while the Brazilian police and military police were dealing with the protests, state-sanctioned violence against people of African descent was still happening. One high-profile case was when the police killed a man outside a grocery store. The people of Brazil are still fighting for equal justice and to stop all this suffering. But on a more lighter note, uh, feijoada is the national dish. The Brazilian flag is a green banner that has a yellow rhombus on it. Inside the yellow rhombus is a blue globe with 27 stars and with the words order and progress in Portuguese wrapped around it. Brazilian Brazil is in eastern South America. Canada. Canada is the 39th most populous country on Earth, the third most populous in North America, and is the USA's northern neighbor. Canada became completely and Canada became a completely and totally independent country in 1982. Canada became racked with protests after the murder of George Floyd, which was around the time when a black woman's suspicious death when police were called to her house was investigated, and the indigenous community was reeling from two murders at the hands of RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Canada's people, like the rest of the world, were appalled by the brutality and were shocked into protest. In Canada, in specific, it started a discussion about anti-black racism, Canadian police brutality, and the ignoring of racial disparities. Like in the US and Brazil, black people face unfair discrimination in many ways, including by the hands of the police. In Canada, there is a somewhat common practice of carding. It's where the police stop someone with little reason and puts their name and info in the police database. Black people are 3 times more likely to be carded, and sometimes in court, people use a person's status of being in the police database as an example of bad behavior, so black people are penalized just for existing. A fact about the process is like elsewhere in the world, the police use aggressive measures. Like Brazil, there is a myth in Canada about being a post-racial society. In Canada, the myth is about the idea that because Canada is not as bad with racism as the US, slavery ended earlier in Canada than in the US, there are more indigenous people left in Canada than in the US, Canada can't be racist. Oh, though two of those facts are non-debatable, the fact is racism is prevalent in Canada and Canadians are waking up. Okay, so on a lighter note, poutine is Canada's national dish. Canada's flag is red, white, and red, with a red maple leaf in the middle. Canada is in northern North America. Those are my sources. Breathe in, out. Thank you for watching.